All right, so I guess in the interest of time, we'll try to get going here. Biggest thing for me from today is I just want to get through some of the future direction stuff and start actually getting us marching forward, at least in some capacity. Whether that's figuratively, literally, I don't really care. We just, I want to make sure we start getting some of this stuff communicated out. I think pull request wise, in general, we're doing pretty good. There may be something that I bring back to this group next week regarding community contributions, depending on some current pending conversations that we've been having with regards to the locale of individuals that are submitting pull requests. But we'll talk about that a little bit more next week once we know a little bit more. So 921 release candidate. I guess, first of all, Oliver, I know there's been a couple emails going around this morning. Where are we at with 921 as of this very minute?
It's basically all set to go. I got the bill late last week, and I just did some testing of my own. The release notes I've been working on, rewriting those to add some more details. But I've got the latest build that I received uploaded in GitHub. It's not published. We just, I guess, need to figure out if we want to blog about it and ask everyone, or at least notify everybody, or if we want to keep it into a smaller group.
Well, I think from my perspective anyway, we've been communicating that we're going to do the release candidates and that kind of thing. So I think we do want to, I think we want to provide a global message that says, hey, this is out there. I think it's worth, kind of making sure that also gives us a platform to be able to, thank DNN software for, handling that release, just because, really all we're doing at this point for the 921 release is posting the zips, and we did manage some of the pull requests, but the build package and a lot of that release readiness was there. But I think that if we're going to do a release candidate, we really need to push that release candidate out as a, here it is, everybody take a look, and, leverage that as something that's out there.
I definitely completely agree. I know we've gone both ways, either saying, do we want to keep it small just to keep the potential reported issues down while we figure out process, or do we want to
I think it's called a release candidate, and we should ask everyone to test it, and we should make sure that we don't release it on a Friday, so it should be released as soon as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that, I guess, Oliver, the question I have for you, would it be possible to get, the release candidate, I'm not as concerned about the day of the week that we release it as I am the actual release, but would you be able to possibly get that published and moved live yet today? Is that achievable?
Yeah, the only thing that's not ready would be like a blog, because I know we talked about either doing a blog or not doing a blog.
Okay.
So
there should be a blog.
If I know Clint said he'd be happy to write a blog. I don't know if you want to write it.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I can ghostwrite it for Mitchell just to save him time. I can ghostwrite it for you, Oliver. It doesn't matter. I just think communication is key to the transparency with the community, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's just not ready, because I know we talked about either doing it or not doing it. So.
Yeah, so I think if you can get it released, Oliver, and then Clint, if you can assist with a draft ghostwritten blog,
all right.
My schedule would greatly appreciate that.
All right, I'll do it.
And then I think that with that in mind, then, we've said all along we've been talking about a 2-week release candidate phase. So what I'm thinking we would plan on doing is releasing 921 then officially on either Monday the 6th or Tuesday the 7th of August. Is there any concern with those dates?
No.
That's fine.
Okay. And then that way we can
There's one
focus
thing
on.
1 second. There's one thing I'm very keen on is that we get included. Thank you for all the contributions we got, and that should be something we should keep with all the future releases, starting with this candidate and so on, giving visibility to all community members who contribute.
Yeah, what I have in there right now, I know not everyone can see it because it's an unpublished release, but it says, the very first thing is it's a release candidate, should not be used in production. Upgrades to the vinyl version will not be supported. The purpose of this release candidate is to help identify any unknown breaking changes which would impact the final release. If you find any such issues, please log them in our issue tracker on GitHub, and we will evaluate each issue, and if required, issue an RC1 build. If no major issues are reported for a 2-week period, then this RC will become the final release. And then the next paragraph, it says we would like to thank everybody from the community and ESW who has submitted pull requests or reported issues. This is our first community-driven release. If you notice anything good or bad, please let us know. We're looking to refine and automate this process as much as possible to improve the quality of platform releases. And then from there, I go into, it's a total of 59 pull requests that were processed for this release, plus an additional 47 pull requests in the Persona Bar repositories. And there's links to all of the milestones that include all the pull requests in the release notes. And then below that is what I'm working on now, which is calling out, I don't really want to list every single issue individually, because a lot of them are not that major. They're small bug fixes. But right now I don't have enough in there of issues that were fixed in the 921 release. So I just have to add a few more. I'm kind of going through everything again right now to figure out which issues to call out. And then I'll get the release candidate posted.
And I can also include the list of those people in the blog if you guys think that would help.
Yeah, I think we should really not only thank everyone who contributed, we should really list them. We should give them and their companies visibility. I think that's the only benefit they get, or anything they get in it in return. And so we should really care for this, because I think that's will help us to get others contribute in the future. This is something which is I'm very serious about.
Okay, so my question would be, obviously I could see who is making a pull request that has been merged. I don't know that I can always see where they were.
No, I think we should. This is important, especially for every bigger one. So I think maybe not this time, but at least we should use the name and in the future. But if we get bigger contributions, either from ESW or any other company, we should ask the people who contribute how they would like to show up in the release notes, so they get recognition for all the contributions.
Yeah, I've got a few people called out already with my initial review that I did back in June. There wasn't a ton of outside work from the community in 921.
Yeah, so just a quick scan, it looks like.
But I think like the first item that's called out is thanks to iJungleBoy, and it links to his GitHub account. So that's Daniel for pull request number 2118. We have hopefully reverted a breaking change which shipped with 920 related to the Sharp zip lib. You should now either be able to use the legacy version or the latest version, and DNN will handle loading the correct assembly. And then the other two that are called out were me and Mitch for just updating documentation.
And I think we should get Peter Donker in there for his resource issue that he fixed.
Okay. Yep. I
just looking through the list of things here, but
so I'm just wondering if there is somebody from the quote unquote outside and they, submit a pull request, at what point in the process do we ask them, hey, how do you want to show up in the release notes? Would that be part of the...
Why not have people fill their biography on their DNN website profile, and we make a standard to link to their profile?
That's what I've been doing, was just linking to each username. So then that way, if they want to link to the company or to their personal site, or...
I think really the only thing that we can do without adding a lot of burden to ourselves in this process is, and I'm all for giving the recognition to the people that are submitting, but we do not have the resources to go and track things down, right? The CLA bot, for example, is something that we needed just to not have to track CLAs, where I think that what we would need to rely on to do this is that the people have an appropriately filled out GitHub profile.
That's what I was going to suggest. Yeah.
If they have information in their GitHub profile, right? I mean, for example, you pull up my GitHub profile, you know who I am, where I work, what my website is. We can extract that information pretty easily. I don't think we want to do anything where we have to dig much deeper into that, because otherwise we're going to be bogged down, and we're already bogged down a little bit in collecting this information, where I think anything else is just too much work.
I think the GitHub account is fine, and we just maybe we need to review our contributors instructions, where we say, please make sure you fill in your GitHub account, and and linking is totally fine.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I've already got some other updates I need to make to the contributing document.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to already make an update to include the .NET Foundation license agreement stuff. And then I'll just make a note in there about GitHub user profile.
So guys, where does this contributor's information actually reside? I mean, it's in the repository, right? So any interested party should be able to just submit a pull request with whatever information they want included, right? That way, you don't have to do anything. I mean, by default, let's just link to the GitHub account, and it's on them to update that. And if they want some website link, whatever, let's just...
But at least we should make them be aware that we are linking to their profiles. So if they want to be recognized, they need to make sure that it's properly filled in. That's all.
Yeah, I think if we just did I think we just did a list of, at the very bottom, including community contributions from, and then just listed each person's, just their GitHub user account, people can go and explore. I think that at least will get us there. Calling out a couple of the specific larger ones then to get a little bit more recognition in those cases, as this is a big community contribution, and then these are all, this is all the other stuff. I think that will work well. And I think what we can do is during the release candidate process for this time, if there's some individual feedback on how we might edit what Oliver has out there, we can edit that prior to the release candidate becoming the real release.
Yeah, and I didn't even think that it wasn't more visible. It's only visible to like the approvers group. So with the next release, I will definitely start it as a Google document. And even right now, if you guys would like me to post this in Slack, it will just have the GitHub markdown, which I don't think will translate, but it's still mostly readable.
Okay.
And I would like to suggest that the blog post about the new release is from Oliver, as long as he's a release manager. So we have some, especially because he doesn't have a community blog at the moment. So that helps people to know where to look at, and we give him some visibility as well. Mm-hmm. If everyone here agrees.
Yeah, I don't mind who Clint writes the blog post as.
Yeah, but you should get some. You did, I think, most of the work for this release, and I think you should get the appropriate visibility as well.
Yeah, Oliver, I'm looking in the list. I do not see your name, so you can.
Yeah, no, I've never blogged before. I never really liked the term blog, so I've kind of just
What do
shunned
you-
it.
Oh, you're forced to.
All right. Well, let us. We'll get that. We can get that squared away here over the course of the next year or two. And I do think, Oliver, we want to make sure we get you some visibility on this as well. Just again,
All right, I definitely appreciate it. But I do want to just reiterate, it's definitely been a team effort, a community effort.
definitely.
But
All
you
right.
did a lot of the work.
All right. Well, so with that, okay, I think we're good. So I want to talk a little bit around the next release. So we've been talking through this a little bit the last couple of times, last couple of meetings. I don't want to spend a bunch of time hashing out all of the intricate details right now of the next release. We really do need to get 9.2.1 out, get a couple other things out there. There's been a lot of contributions and notes. Just reviewing what we briefly talked about last time in terms of 9.2.2, we're still targeting a code freeze date of August 17th release candidate. August 19th. Let me edit the document there. Release candidate on August 19th, and then the release September 2nd. The biggest thing we're looking for there is the automated build support for the community, including symbols and NuGet packages, which I think we're getting closer and closer to that. And then the big thing here with 9.2.2, Ash, would fall on, I think, on the ESW side in terms of changing over to consuming the automated builds as part of the QA process and the internal processes at ESW. Where do we stand on that now that we do have community builds generating for install and source?
Yeah, I think as we said last time, we were going to wait for the 9.2.1 to be out. And as soon as that is locked, sealed from our side, we will switch over.
Okay. And so with the release candidate at this point, with the release candidate going out in a short window between now and our proposed code freeze, is there thought that we're going to actually take and merge additional fixes in for a 9.2.1 release when 9.2.1 right now is going to go out August 6th, and then the code freeze for 9.2.2 is August 17th. So a period of 2 weeks. Because my personal opinion right now is if we release the release candidate widespread today, as long as nothing horrible happens, then we release it on the 6th as planned. If anything big comes up, I think we're at a point where we either are going to need to scrap the 9.2.1 release and roll things into 9.2.2, or we're going to need to push a 9.2.2 release. Because I don't think that, if we don't have ESW switch over until after 9.2.1 is fully out, and that means that we're not there until essentially the 6th when it releases, that's only 2 weeks before the code freeze to make sure that that process is working. Thoughts?
I think we need to if we release a 9.2.1 release candidate, we will have to release next release. It doesn't make sense that we have a 9.2.1 release candidate and then a 9.2.2 release candidate, and people don't understand what we're doing. I think if it's necessary that we have to push the release date, then we will have to push a little bit the release candidate for 9.2.2 as well.
My thought is I think 9.2.2 is quite close to 9.2.1. It will be quite confusing to people as to, do we go 9.2.1? Do I wait for 9.2.2? I think we should reconsider our decision when we get to August 6th as to how we're tracking 9.2.1. Everything sort of hinges upon 9.2.1. As soon as it's successful, lock and loaded, then we can kind of see, do we need 3 weeks or 4 weeks for the next GA release?
So
I think I think 922 is mainly for us to stabilize our release process, and we can communicate this very easily and say won't be many fixes in 922. There won't be many. Don't expect too much from 922. It's for us just to make sure that our release process is working for all the upcoming releases, and we won't have any problems in the future.
Okay, so that I guess leads to the general question, right? So these meetings are recorded. The community does actually watch these meetings. I think what makes sense, if this is what everyone agrees with, that we need to get a blog post written that explains that the 921, and I think, Clint, if we can make this part of the 921 release candidate blog post, is to basically share a outlook of what's coming next. That 921 release candidates here, the tentative release date, assuming nothing bad happens, is August 6th. We're then going to rally as the community to validate that our automated tooling to take full control over the release process is there. And as we get closer to the actual date, then we communicate. I don't want to publicly commit to a date right now then if we're not willing to move forward. Because what happened with 921, right, was the expectation that the ESW testing was going to be using the builds that we were building. I'm not comfortable with us planning a release in any public capacity until we get that process actually switched, because that's where we'll lose the credibility. I'd rather push a date. I'd rather not communicate a date than to say, okay, we're going to do this and then have it be something entirely outside of the control of the community. I don't, and I'm not trying to be negative in anything with ESW. I mean, Tomas and Ash and the rest of you guys have been fantastic. But I want to be very careful that if we are leading the way that we're careful with how we do that. So is there any real argument against that, we let everybody know 921 is here, test it, this is what we're going to do, kind of reiterating some of the stuff that Oliver's got in there. The next roadmap is, Sebastian, I think your point is 100% correct. 922 may be a short release, and it may be just for it may just be for mostly automation, but I think there's a number of persona bar fixes that are already being queued up into 922. So I actually think there will be a fair bit of fixes. But I think that we just need to make sure that we communicate to the community that that's what we're looking to try to do. And that really 922 is, as much as a bug fix release, it's a relationship change release as well.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are either need to push the 922 release a couple weeks, if that's like the date ESW can switch over to using it. But then on the other hand, like 922 development is currently ongoing. So if they can switch over sooner to using the VSTS builds, we'll get those issues sooner and have a better chance of meeting that mid-August date. But either one's fine with me. We just need to pick one and go with it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move forward with. Let's just move forward getting that release candidate out. We'll get the blog out, Clint. We can work to make sure we get all of that out there, and whether whoever's name gets associated with posting it, we'll make sure that we get out there. We just need to start to communicate. I've been getting a lot of emails about where is 921, blah blah blah. All right, so we'll revisit this probably next week after we've had a chance to see what's happened with 921's release candidate. I'll be curious to see the metrics in terms of how many people have actually looked at the release candidate and how many people have done actual validation with what we put out there. So with that, last week we were talking about getting some quick videos, Ash, in terms of how to make changes to the persona bar with quick reference examples. Any update for us on a status for that?
Yeah, so Mitch, I was not able to get it done, so I'll find actually someone else who can do that.
Okay.
I sort of forgot how it is done, so I didn't want to give wrong information.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Do you think it'll be possible to try to get that before next week's meeting?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll get someone from engineering to actually get it done for you. Those
Awesome.
guys, they do it every day.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, it's probably easier for one of them to whip something up quickly. All right, so then I just wanted to let everybody know here, we've been going back and forth in terms of from our conversations about the .NET Core direction, roadmap, and all of this kind of stuff. I had reached out to Microsoft, 3 weeks ago, trying to get some, input from them on future direction, importance, and pathway and suggestions. I've still received no response. I have sent another inquiry back to the Scots, asking for some guidance, direction, smoke signals, sign of life, anything from them. Hopefully I will get something back with that. And then related to that, Ash and Clint, I think that the three of us need to regroup and figure out if and what we need to communicate to Andy about liquid content and the conversations that we've had. That conversation didn't necessarily get on all of our radar as much as it did just to keep that communication channel open and flowing.
Yeah, sounds good. So, Clint, whenever you're able to get some time with Andy, and I think what is clear, what needs to be communicated as well is what community thinks about .NET Core, because I think that was one thing that he wanted to first find out what community is thinking about .NET Core, and then kind of address the liquid content question, whether it's the right architecture, given we're going to be changing everything. So the question was it the right architecture for the platform or not? So I think that's where he left off at the VUC. I think it's about 4 weeks now, and if we have our answer from a community perspective as to how we think we want to approach .NET Core, and then we'll present it to him and kind of hear from him as to what he thinks. Is it still, I guess the answer that we want to get out of him is that, does he still want to pursue moving the liquid content into the platform or not? And I guess the other question that the community has to have good understanding themselves or agreement, do you want this or not? Right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think the consensus from my perspective that we came to, and chime in, I mean, most of everybody that was here for that conversation was here, is we can't up the dependencies of the platform to a level to support a dependency jump as hard. My biggest concern right now is Andrew brought up a interesting agenda item with regards to an API for remote DNN module installations. I'm guessing what you're talking about here, Andrew, is something similar to what Canteris's polydeploy can do. But
yeah,
framework,
do you want me to explain it a little?
Yeah, go for it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Sometimes I have mic problems. All right, so the other day, Matt and I met with Daryl, the guy that built the DNN packager, and we had a really interesting conversation about how some code that he has that's open source that allows you to remotely install modules through DNN instance, and the way that he recommends stuff was only for local development and not for production environments. And I have very limited knowledge of DNN prompt, but I know that at the end of the day, DNN prompt is a web API. So one of the things that came up in our conversation would be, what if we created a new web API inside of prompt that was a post RESTful method that allowed you to send a file stream to it, and then then we could take the code that Daryl has written, include that in platform to then call the necessary commands that would run the DNN platform module installer. And then what we'd be able to do is use something like a PowerShell module to automate module installs. We would be able to, do all sorts of cool stuff in the DevOps world for automatically deploying a new module to necessary production environments. And one of the reasons why I think this would be a good idea is there's a lot of different third-party vendors out there right now that have some way of side loading or installing a module. PolyDeploy has an extension you have to install that creates their necessary hooks. Daryl's working on his own stuff, and I'm sure there's a handful of other ones out there that I just don't even know about. But if we were able to create some type of API that these different vendors could leverage, then they're not duplicating their code in all of their different proprietary or open source solutions. And now we would have an accepted way that we could install these remotely. Now, when Matt and I were talking about it the other day, this opens up a very big security vulnerability or potential security vulnerability by allowing somebody to remotely send, a zip file into DNN and trying to run the installer. I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if it's a bad idea, but it's something that I wanted to bring up and see what people thought. Daryl pretty much promised us code and said that he would submit a pull request for this if we thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, and to the point,
I think it's a great idea. If we use the built-in security and web API to limit it to super users, and then maybe even have a checkbox to turn it off in like host settings to disallow remote installation of modules.
Yeah, right. I know the way that we do some of the web API stuff with DNN Prompt is you have to enable like the PowerShell module that Peter wrote. You have to enable JWT before you can even start running DNN Prompt commands remotely. So leveraging that, and I'll like say maybe having an additional setting to turn this on and off, because it can create a huge security vulnerability. I'd agree with that part. And I think Matt should go next because we've been kind of off.
So I guess just one other thing is that maybe, because I could also see the ability where you'd want an internal system to be able to run it.
I would think that I've been thinking about this on the security side since we had our conversation, Andrew. And, one of the things you could do, just similar to what Kenteris did, is you just have a whitelist of URLs that can access it or something.
So that's what I was going to say. So I've been working with Brian a bit with the Kenteris PolyDeploy stuff, and that whitelist will be the death of me in Azure. If it wasn't to Brian, I still wouldn't have PolyDeploy working, but at least I have it working now. I think that this brings up something that we've needed to chat about in a while. Is I do think, just like we have the GDPR subgroup, I believe that we really do need to break out and have ideally in the end, right, rather than us having to meet every week and go through this, I'd like to be able to divide certain things out as tasks and associate them to, individuals that are, willing and technologically savvy to help make some of the decisions as it relates to security or other things. I think we really need to take a look at this. I mean, in the end, on the surface, an API that's restricted to a host user account is not a lot different than a user logging in with a host account and uploading the module. Right. There's not a lot of difference there as long as all of the same credentials and restrictions are applied.
One difference I see is that there would be no way to accept the license agreement.
Yeah,
I know nobody reads them, but
if you did
silent installs,
there's ways around that. You
install anyway, because like if you just put the install ASPX in, you drop your stuff in the install folder, and you say module install ASPX update resources, you're not accepting the license.
Or if you add anything new in the installer, by default, So I do agree. I don't. it's a bit laughable the way that we do the license accepting now anyway, which may be
There's no license.
it may be an entirely different conversation because you don't actually have any way of attesting that you accepted it. You know, I don't know what Visual Studio does behind the scenes, you know, for example. But I do believe, you know, that I don't think something like this should be using JWT tokens or anything that has any type of longevity in terms of access. You know, if it's a token that's valid for 24 hours and somebody does something stupid in a, you know, coffee shop on shared Wi-Fi, I do think we need to be cognizant of what somebody could do that would be inadvertent. But I think that a general conversation around the security, there's been a lot of polydeploy conversations around it. And I think some of the stuff that they did worked. Some of the stuff that they did made it literally not work in environments. Their whitelist implementation, for example, stopped Azure from being able to work at all.
Yeah. We got to have
the way that routing's done.
We got to have something that enables something for continuous integration for, you know.
Right. I mean, I tell you, life is entirely different with our continuous integration implementation that does auto module and it deploys with polydeploy. It's saving us probably 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right now, and that's on one project. So it's huge to be there. But I think we want to just, you know, really make sure that we look at this from a security focus. So I think in the end, in terms of the community contribution, I personally think it would be great. I mean, I think it's the lack of this feature is what drove Contreras to build polydeploy in the beginning, right? So, you know, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other in terms of a different way of doing it. But I think from a security perspective, if we have a few interested and knowledgeable parties on the security side that we can review, I think that would be great. And Ash or Tomas, I think one of you two or somebody that you guys delegate would be great to have for those security conversations as well. And I think we just need to make sure that we validate that process.
So Andrew, I was just saying that there's already a web API to do the module install, right? The persona bar is all web API driven. So you have that as a super user, but of course, and also prompt is restricted to super users too.
Okay. So we may already have 90% of it in there.
Yeah, but
so there's a web API already that takes a file stream that we could use.
Yeah, I mean, how else would I have to go look into how else would persona?
Yeah,
persona bar doesn't.
Can you?
Except I thought the persona bar one took the file, put it in the installer, unzipped it, and then started displaying the resources. Like it returned where the directory is. And
interactive. Yeah, it is interactive. Yeah, it is interactive.
We want something that is.
Yeah. So right. But what I'm saying that in principle, there is already a web API that does something like that.
Right. So basically, the security side of it, we're already there.
Yeah, security side.
So let's back up for a second about the web API call. So one of the things that so I was doing a little bit of research over the weekend, and we have the code that does all of this. I mean, that's how the DNN installer works. How the persona bar works. So it all ends up calling that installer class, and you specify, the file location, a couple other parameters, and then it runs through the package install process, runs the SQL provider, Delta scripts, and all that stuff. All that stuff is fine, but having a simple call that you just pass in, a file stream to, and say, I want to install this. Done.
Yep.
That's the golden ticket. That's the holy grail of what we're trying to do.
Sorry, I'm breaking up a little here on my side. One thing that's currently missing is dependencies resolving dependencies. So if you try to install just anything and you don't have the dependencies installed already, it just tells you, oh, sorry, I can't install because you require Y and over.
I think we lost you, but yeah, I think I know where he was going. If you miss a dependency, it's just error rather than error because of XYZ.
Right.
Well, that should be possible, right?
Yeah, but we should be able to figure out the.
Yeah, it should be multiple.
That shouldn't. I mean, I don't think that would be a huge deal. So I guess the bigger revelation with that, Andrew, is I would say that we've already established the security construct of it, right? Since Persona Bar is Web API, right? We're already 90% of the way there with it being restricted to host users, and it's essentially publicly accessible. So
then whatever
I
we
would
do.
like to caution you guys with the previous experience on the prompt is that it was assumed that it will always remain super user, but sometime down the road, people may come in and ask, can you open it up to admin and things like that? Don't do that till you've done your due diligence.
I think that
That's a different discussion.
I think for this, I think we really would want to separate it from anything Persona Bar related to. Like this is, I mean, module install it will never, I think it's very safe to say it will never be anything other than a super user unless we create a new user type. Because if a super user is the only thing that can do things that impact the entire installation, any module install impacts the entire installation, period, end of story. Right? I think that
and same for skins.
Yeah. So, all right. So with that, I think, Andrew, I guess what I'd say is if we've got something that takes what we've got today and streamlines it, right? If there's some existing stuff that will make that more into a one push deploy rather than multiple APIs and one that gives back a good status or a reasonable status, I think there's some interest there.
One suggestion, I think it would be helpful if we could establish an installer group, something which takes care of, maybe we have some people who wants to take care of installer and improvements, because I think this is one of the most important areas of DNN, and when we want to break out groups from this group or from the community, in my opinion, that would be an important feature which needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. So Andrew, you and I can continue our conversations, and we'll try to take a look and see how we get more detailed info back, at least to return errors from that API call, and then I mean maybe we can do something with the DNN CLI and do the DNN prompt web endpoint.
Okay, and just to clarify, Mitch, we're getting pretty much this is a good idea. We should proceed and research this some more.
I don't see any reason not to.
All right, cool. Just wanted to double check because we all want to use our time valuably.
I mean, and what I would add as a self-serving request, a VSTS task to then leverage that. I
already got it in the works.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the easy part, right? Once you have the endpoint. So
I just don't feel like writing my own VSTS tasks, and between a couple of you, I've managed to avoid it. So thank you.
I might release that with my business and charge $1 for it, but
fine. Where do I send the check?
I'm just kidding.
Make sure
all right.
check doesn't bounce.
We've got about 7 minutes left. Is there anything else that we need to address today?
At least in the recorded portion of the video.
Right. Or the unrecorded part, just say, Clint, stop before you start.
I think Clint already mentioned before that we are trying to work on the GDPR stuff, but I can't currently give you a status. It was in the initial meeting today, but of course we are trying to at least deliver some parts for DNN 9.3.
Awesome. Thank you,
Smash. Daniel was saying something, but he was muted.
Yeah, I would have something, but I think it's for the not recorded part of it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So the only thing I want to say in the recorded part before Clint stops anything is 921, right? Those of us that have been doing pull requests, processing, and everything else, we've been looking at the 921 release. I really would appreciate the rest of you guys here. Take a look at 921, give it a shot. Just make sure it's not totally broken. That kind of thing would be greatly appreciated. We've spent a lot of time testing and validating stuff, but always good to get second sets of eyes. And with that, I think we can stop recording. Daniel, you can go ahead.